Grace Rand, founder of The Love Method and author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Live, Love, Engage: How to Stop Doubting Yourself and Start Being Yourself. In this podcast, we share practical advice from a spiritual perspective on how to live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically, so you can create a life and business with more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Live, Love, Engage. Namaste. Do you find it tough to forgive people sometimes? I know it's not always easy, but stay tuned because today's guest has a step-by-step process to help you find the path to understanding and peace through forgiveness. And if this is your first time here, welcome. I am Gloria Grace. I help female entrepreneurs release negative thought patterns like self-doubt so you can grow a business that aligns with your soul's purpose. And I'm so really just excited about our guest today because I feel we're already aligned, actually. In just the brief moments I had to talk with her before I bring her on, which I will do here in just a moment. And but let me tell you about her. Her name is Katharine Giovanni, and she's a 3-time award-winning best-selling author of 12 books, a dynamic speaker, trainer, and advisor. And she also has a corporate background too, which we'll probably talk about a little bit as well. But her latest work is called The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness: Unlocking Your Power. And it offers profound insights into the transformative power of forgiveness. So without further ado, let's dive right into this. And I'm going to bring on Katharine to the podcast. So welcome. So glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, I want to talk about, I know normally I usually ask our guests, like, what got you into doing what you're doing today? So in a way I am doing that because I want to know from you, what got you interested in forgiveness that you decided to write a book about it?
Well, anger, to be honest, and how to permanently forgive people, because when you forgive people, some of them have a nasty habit of not staying forgiven. And it started way back in the 8th grade when my parents were getting an ugly divorce with all the bells and whistles. I was getting bullied and schooled really badly, and I tried to commit suicide. So I spent the next 15 years that angry teenager, stereotypical angry teenager. And I kind of went into my 20s, went into my 30s. My mother died, and I realized that I couldn't continue my life the way it was. So I decided to change one morning on a dime, really. And that's when I discovered that forgiving people kind of made me feel better. And that started the journey.
Wow. And it seems like, okay, that's great that you just decided on a dime that you're going to do that. But, and I know I saw this, I think in looking at your book, it's like, okay, yeah, people tell us all the time that, forgive or forgive and forget, but it's not always easy to do that, especially depending on how hurt you are by what someone has done. So when you decided that, okay, I can't live this way anymore, but then how did you actually decide to do that?
Well, I kind of read an article back in those days, we really didn't have the computer. If you wanted something, you got a magazine, a book, you went to the library. That's how old I am. So I decided to just forgive people, and I decided to be positive, and I kind of bumbled my way through life for a while doing that. But the thing about forgiveness is everybody teaches you that you have to forgive. Your pastor, your minister, your teachers, your parents, you have to forgive. You'll learn that in the sandbox when you're a kid. Nobody teaches you how. So everybody listening to this broadcast or watching this broadcast right now, when you think of forgiveness on a 10 scale, with 10 being the most horrific, unforgivable thing, you're all thinking of your number 10 person, and you don't want to forgive that person. Neither did I. So what I teach people is you don't have to forgive your number 10. This is what I've learned. You don't, because there's a whole bunch of other things you can forgive before you even get to that person. And that person, it might be an unforgivable act. It might not even be appropriate for you to forgive. There's some very, very beautiful, loving people on the planet who are capable of forgiving a number 10. For the rest of us, it's a bear. So I want you to start with your number ones. I want you to start with the easy ones. And then you work your way up to the number 10 people.
Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense. It's baby steps. I think with just about anything in life, when you want to learn, I mean, this is a skill just as much as anything else that we would do in life. So to be able to start with the things that you can do, have you found, I mean, you mentioned that, there's certain people, certainly that, really spiritual people perhaps, or who can forgive those tens, and I'm thinking of, let's just say the first name that popped up in my head was, and again, see, I'm showing my age too, Ted Bundy. Okay. So he was a mass murderer from a long time ago.
Yeah.
But if you were, let's say the parent of one of his victims, is it possible for someone, even like following what you're talking about, to be able to come to a place where they could be able to forgive?
There's a lot of other things. I want you to start with the number ones first purposely, because I want you to sit down and I want you to write a list of people, places, and things. I did say places and things. Yes, I did. And I want you to just kind of stream it. And then I want you to label all of these things from 1 to 10. And you can have multiple ones. You can have, 5 5s if you want. It's all good. It's all correct. And you leave the 8s, 9s, and 10s. You do those absolutely dead last. And you start with the ones and you kind of work your way up. And there's other things you can forgive. For example, let's take the number 10s. There's other things you can forgive. Let's take a horrific example of rape. Let's say you were raped, or it's a Ted Bundy thing, whatever it was. There's other things you can forgive because you don't want to forgive the rapist because they were wrong. But forgiveness does not mean they were right. Forgiveness is selfish. You do it for yourself. You do it because you want to get them out of your head. You want to stop thinking about it all the time because that's what you're doing. When you're angry, all you're doing is thinking of this person. Now, for those people who are listening to this broadcast, I'm about to hold a glass in front of my face. So I'm holding this glass. This glass is anger. So if I hold this glass too long, eventually it's all I can see. I can't see the opportunities coming in front of me because I am my anger now. It's all I am. It's all I can see. It's all I can talk about. It's all I can breathe about. So you want to put the glass down. You want to get these people out of your head. So there's other things you can forgive. You can forgive the bed, the table, the chair, the building. You can forgive yourself. You can forgive all these other things before you even forgive that person. Now, here's the secret sauce to the entire thing. The reason people don't stay forgiven is because you didn't forgive the energy. Einstein said and proved that energy is neither created nor destroyed, and everything on the planet has an energy around it. If you're spiritual, you might call it an aura. Well, what happens when we get angry? You think that you get angry and the words just kind of float into the air and dissipate. Sadly, they do not. They hang in your energy field. So the more angry you get, the darker your energy field is going to be, to the point where you are literally a walking dark thundercloud, because I did that for a very, very long time. I was a thundercloud. So forgiving is going to lighten that energy so you can see things. You can see opportunities. You might even drop some weight. There's a reason to buy the book. You might lose some weight. You might see the opportunity of your next, significant other. You might see your dream job. Why? Because you're not looking at anger anymore. You actually can see the opportunities. I forgave 1974.
Oh,
the whole year. Why
Okay.
did I forgive 1974? Everybody wants to know, because it was awful. That's when my parents got divorced. I tried to commit
Mhm.
suicide, and I did forgive all the players in that year, and I forgave the energy. But I decided, I'm just going to sit here, and I have a little mantra in the book. But I'm just going to sit here and forgive it. And as you forgive, you'll feel lighter. Some people tell me their shoulders feel lighter. They can feel better. You're going to start to see life better. Coffee will smell good. But start with the ones. Don't go right to the tens, because the tens are an absolute bear.
Mm. And I love that analogy that you have about, the glass, and just also for the folks listening, because they might have been thinking of a see-through glass, but no, you had an opaque glass in front of your face that you could not see through. And that's why that anger was blocking you. And yeah, I get that so much. And I'm even thinking of, my mom liked to hold on to anger a lot. And I think that,
Ooh, grudges. Grudges are fun. Oh, yeah.
yeah, except not so much, because I also believe that that's, contributed to things like, I think, like high blood pressure and heart problems, and,
Toxic.
and her dying at 78, where she could have, her own mother lived to be 95, but her mother let go of stuff.
The thing about your tens is you want to get your 10 down to a 9, down to an 8, down to a 5, down to a 4. This journey is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And my forgiveness matrix, which is what I call it in the book, it's like an onion. And I get asked, told this all the time. I did your matrix and it didn't work. Yeah, it did. You got rid of the first layer, right? So there's probably 9 other layers under there. So as you forgive people, I really think, if you don't feel like you've forgiven them, and how can you tell? You see their name and you feel nothing. You go on Facebook, you go on LinkedIn, or you just write their name on a piece of paper. And if you don't feel any emotional charge, they've been forgiven. You don't feel good. You don't feel bad. You feel absolutely nothing. Now, let me be clear before we move on. Just because I've forgiven you doesn't mean I want a relationship with you. I may not, and it's perfectly fine. I've forgiven a lot of people on my own personal list that I actually don't want a relationship with, but I have completely forgiven them.
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And I think you've hinted at this a little bit, but I just wanted to be clear, if you can explain a little bit about when you said that people may not stay forgiven. So what does that look like when you're saying that?
People come up to me all the time and they'll say, well, I have forgiven them. Yeah, you probably did. Let's do it again. Because the reason you if you go on Facebook and you look at somebody's name and you start thinking bad thoughts about them and hope that that the earth swallows them up, we all do it. Come on, let's be clear. You don't say it out loud, but you're looking at the person who used to beat you up in high school and you're like, well, if something bad happens to you, I'm not going to be upset about it. But they don't stay forgiven because their energy is still hanging around in your energy field. That's why they don't stay forgiven. So you forgive the person, you forgive the energy around the person, you forgive yourself, often very hard to do, forgive the energy around the person, and then you forgive the energy around the entire thing. And most people will feel a little, I usually, right here in my solar plexus, I usually feel a little bit of movement there. A lot of people will get tired. So I really advise that you do this before you go to bed, because your body will heal itself as you sleep. And please don't forgive more than 10, 12 people at a time, because you'll make yourself sick. Once the anger has to leave your body. And your body will heal itself when you're sleeping, which is why most people get really tired. That's how my son knows that he's really forgiven somebody, because he gets really tired. I get how do I delicately say this? I get stomach issues, shall we say? And I remember when I first discovered this method, I sat down and I forgave like 50, 60. I wrote my list, and I'm an overachiever. So I barreled through the list. I tried to forgive everybody I could. Some of them I could forgive completely. I put a check by it. Some I had to circle back. And I spent the next 3 days in bed with what everybody thought was a stomach flu. And it was not the stomach flu. I just forgave too many people. And my body literally had to play catch up and release all of that toxic anger. Because remember, as we said, anger is toxic. And if it stays in your body, it'll make you sick. So it has to leave your body. So do it before bed.
Thank you for sharing that. Because, oh my goodness, because I definitely understand that it can be overwhelming and
Yep.
yeah. I'm trying to think where I want to go here, because I've got lots of different thoughts about this. And is there oh, I know what I wanted to ask. Is there a commonly held belief about forgiveness that you passionately disagree with?
It's not that I passionately disagree with it, but I think that forgiveness is personal. And there's a lot of absolutely excellent recovery programs out there. And a lot of them will suggest, you want to make amends. You have to reach out and call the person. I don't think you have to reach out and call anybody, unless, of course, you want to. You can if you want to. I think that it's personal. You can do it in the privacy of your own home. Nobody has to know you've done this. Forgiveness is selfish. You do it for you, because there's an invisible cord that's attached from you to your hater, and you want to cut that in half. You want to stop thinking about that person. So you forgive that person and then forgive the energy, so you can actually release them. You can go in peace and they'll go in peace. Now, let me be clear. It doesn't mean they were right. They weren't. It just means you want to be free. That's what it means. Forgiveness is selfish. You're not doing it for them. It's never for them. It's 100% not for them. It's for you, so you can have some peace and you can concentrate on things in life that brings you, I don't know, joy.
Absolutely. We definitely need more of that in our lives, for sure. And yeah, so good.
Let me tell you a real quick story, because I think your audience might like it.
Good.
One of the craziest things that ever happened to me happened with one of my number ones. And remember, the number ones are the easiest. So I sat down and I thought, okay, I'm going to forgive a childhood friend. And I don't remember what we were angry about. I haven't talked to this person in, I kid you not, 30, 40 years. And so I sat down in my bed and I thought, easy peasy, lemon squeezy, I can forgive this person. So I did. 2 hours later, she calls me up on the phone. And I'm shocked out of my mind. And we did all the things you think we would do. We talked, we catched up, all these things. But I'm a curious little bear. I had to know. I said, what, out of curiosity, not that I'm not glad you called, but why did you call today of all days? She said, Katharine, it was the strangest thing. 2 hours ago, which was when I was forgiving her, FYI, a figurine you gave me way back in school flew off my shelf and landed in the middle of my room. And I saw it and I thought, after all these years, maybe I should give her a call. We were 700 miles apart. So if forgiveness has the power to move a figurine for a level 1 person, can you imagine what it will do to your life, to your body, to your cells? And for all the doubters out there, I have a science chapter in there to back up what I'm saying.
Oh, I believe it. And I definitely have to get your book now too. And I wish I'd read it before this, but it's okay. Better late than never, because I understand about the energy part so much, because I've been reading a book called Dancing Woolly Masters, which is it's an old book, but it explains physics to people who don't have a math background, or someone who didn't take physics in school, and talks about how on this quantum level that energy, and that life is unpredictable, and that everything is connected, and that science is coming together with spirituality because of this amazing discoveries that they're discovering on the quantum level. That was kind of a redundancy there, but you know what I mean, folks. So I totally get that. And that is amazing that she was only a level 1. I mean, holy moly.
There was a Japanese researcher, and I can't pronounce his name. I want to say Masumura. I can't pronounce his name.
I know who you're talking about. The
Yeah.
water person.
That's right. And he, for those of you who don't know who we're talking about, you can research this online. You can see the pictures, Google it. It's all there for you to look at. But he did serious research on water. And let me dumb it down really far. What he really did is he took 2 vessels of water and he said really nice things to one, loving things, beautiful words. He treated it well. And then he took another container of water and he said the most hateful things you can think of, nasty, horrible things. And he did this for a significant period of time. Then he put the water under a microscope to see what it looked like. The water that he said nasty things to were deformed. The images were black. They were ugly. You can go on Google and look at the images. They're fascinating. The images that he spoke love to looked absolutely beautiful. They were like, it's like putting snow under a microscope. They were absolutely gorgeous pictures. Our bodies are 98% water. So by forgiving yourself and saying nice things to yourself, imagine what it would do to your body.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And even as we've been having this conversation, you know, I'm thinking again that there are people who I've forgiven, but I think perhaps I do need to go back in and look at it, because I do know that sometimes I will still see and feel that little bit of charge yet. So
It's
it's
still
a
a
good
charge.
reminder. You know, we're human, right?
And some people don't want to, some people listening to the two of us are thinking, well, I don't want to forgive because then I'd have to lose my story. And that's where I was all those years ago. I was a survivor of a dysfunctional childhood. I survived bullying. I survived suicide. And that was my story. It was my identity. And if I lost my story, who would I be? It was very, very scary. But once I realized that I wasn't my story, and maybe I could have joy in my life and I could have friends and I could get married, then it was easier to jump off the cliff and say, okay, well, I don't know who I'm going to be, but I don't want to be this. So I have to do something.
Yeah.
But you can lose the story and still be who you were always meant to be.
Absolutely, because here's the thing, we can create new stories, or we get to decide who we want to be at any moment of any day. So just decide now that this is who you want to be, and then start living that way. And yeah, so good. I touched on it very early on at the beginning that this the work you're doing now is not the work that you have always done. So can you share a little bit? Because I'm curious to know how the transition has been for you, especially because I had someone on last week who was talking about transitions. So how was the transition from what you used to do into what you're doing now? How has that been? And maybe explain a little bit about what I'm talking about. I want to let you do it.
I'm credited with being one of the original founders of the independent concierge industry. Way back in 1995, I had my own company. We were meeting and event planners. And back in those days, there was floppy disks and dial-up modems, and you could get coffee and a sandwich in the time it took to dial up your computer and get it to run. Well, my husband read an article in Entrepreneur Magazine about this brand new industry called the concierge industry. And there may have been 20 independent concierge around the country in those days. And we thought, well, we're doing more concierge work than meeting planning, so we pivoted. And in those days, we didn't have 2 dimes to scrape together, so we needed to create a website. What's a website? This is all brand new to everybody. So don't ask me to repeat this ever again. I'm not sure I could duplicate it, but I'm kind of scrappy and I'm kind of a geek. So I read the Microsoft Word help file and figured out how to do a rudimentary website and threw one up. It won a Webby Award. Please don't be impressed, because it was the first year they were giving out Webby Awards. They were giving the darn things away. And that irritates a lot of people who have never won a Webby Award, but please don't be impressed. It was nothing fun. So I got the website up and running, and within 6 months, I had people calling me from all over the country and the world saying, could you just help me figure out what to charge? Could you help me? How do I do a brochure, a business card? How do I set my business up? And if they weren't in North Carolina, I thought, well, why not help them? They're no competition to me. So I did. And my husband asked me the $1 million question. Why are you doing it for free? It's a really good question. So I pivoted my company again, and we started to become consultants. And from there, I was asked, well, there's no association for independent concierge. Maybe you want to start one. So because I have a relatively high tolerance to pain, I started a concierge association and successfully ran it for 20 years until I retired in 2020. Actually, I retired in 2022, 23. And the Concierge Association, sadly, 2020 killed it, as it killed many associations around the world. I have written books, the Concierge Manuals, its 6th and final edition, customer service. I have trained customer service all over the world on how to have 5-star customer service. So how did I flip that into forgiveness? Well, I can't teach you to be warm, friendly, and approachable if you're angry inside, because your anger is going to bleed through your body language, whether you want it to or not. And unless you are a world-class Oscar-winning actor or actress, you're not going to be able to stop it. So I had to figure out a way to get people to lose their anger so they were more authentic. And most of these people couldn't leave their station, especially if they were a hotel concierge or they just had a station in a lobby. And that's when I came up with forgiveness. But back in those days, you didn't introduce this soft topic to your workshops. It wasn't done. Nobody did it. Well, as I said, I have a high tolerance to pain, so I decided to do it because it was the only way I could get people to release their anger. So I started to teach forgiveness a good 20 years ago, and I introduced it very subtly. But here's the really interesting things. Whenever I did a workshop, remember, this was like a 2-3 day gig, a lot of business topics. I had 60-minute piece on forgiveness in the middle. And it's very interesting to me that all of a sudden people had to go to the bathroom. They started coughing. They decided they needed to leave right at the beginning of that session. And magically, those roaming students would come back as soon as I was finished. Not everybody can handle forgiveness. Why? Because they were all thinking of their number 10 person, and they didn't want to forgive them because they didn't think they were right. They weren't ready, which is why I want you to start with the number ones. But that's how kind of, by 2023, after almost 30 years in the business, I decided maybe it was time that I flipped. So I have now got a second career teaching forgiveness and intuition and in business and life.
I love that. Yeah. And what I just thought of too, and I've had this conversation with others as well, is I do find it lovely. I was going to say a different word, but no, I think it's lovely that the universe will prepare us for these other, developments in our life by giving us the experiences that we have to learn from. And then we're able to parlay, some of the other maybe more concrete business experience perhaps, or something like that, or whatever other experience you've had, to then still be able to use it as you go on. You can pivot, tons of times in your life, but you still retain those nuggets of experience and learning, and you can still apply them no matter what you're doing. And I think it's what makes us really cool, interesting beings. I don't know.
You did that a lot better than I usually do. I usually call it the law of the guinea pig.
Oh.
Because I seem to be God's guinea pig, and whatever I go through, I'm stupid enough that I usually write about it, and inevitably it goes into a book someplace.
There you go.
Yeah, I did about last year. I remember I was in my office, and I looked up at the ceiling and I said, dial back the guinea pig thing for a while, you know?
Yeah, it can be old sometimes. I know. And one of my last things, and hopefully the microphone is not picking up my nagging cat who's decided he's hungry, but too bad. It's not lunchtime yet. What are you curious about?
I'm curious about people. I love being able to turn their lights on. I love helping people. I love seeing people be successful and make that $1 million. It's what gets me up in the morning, but I'm very curious to see where life's going to go from here. And I am a curious little bear. And every morning I wake up and I think, you know, I wonder where it's going to lead me now. So it's a question of listening to that little bird in your shoulder that everybody has and heeding its advice.
Awesome. Well, this has been wonderful. We've had a really good talk. I'm so glad that I had you on today. This has been very helpful for me, and I know it's been helpful for other folks out there, which brings me to my last question for you is that if someone listening to this wants to know more about how they can really be more specific and practical about forgiveness, because I know you go into, we've only had a little glimpse of what you have in the book, I'm sure. So how can folks get a hold of you?
Well, the audio, for those of you who don't like to read, one of my sons and I developed an audio book that's on Amazon, as is the ebook and the paperback. But just go to KatharineGiovanni.com, and Katharine is spelled really strangely. Thanks, Mom. KATHARINE Giovanni.com, and all the information about me and all the books that I've written are all right there, as well as a blog and a bunch of videos.
All right. Well, I don't know. I think she might have been a fan of Katharine Hepburn, because I think Katharine Hepburn spelled Katharine that way.
And Katharine Hepburn, Katharine McPhee, who was the American Idol actress,
that's
and
right.
me. They're really the only three. I'm sure there's other ones out there, but
so it's a good way. You stand out that way. So mom had a reason for it, I'm sure.
I guess she did.
Well, again, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you were able to share some time with us today. And I really, I think this idea of starting with the easy ones, you know, the easy things to forgive, and not just people, but also things. I think that's important as well. You know, you can forgive your car sometimes, you know. I think will be something, you know.
The person you cut off in the grocery store on aisle 5. You can forgive that person.
Yeah.
You know, the person who stole your lunch at work. Okay, we hope that you can forgive that person. Maybe they were hungry. The easy ones. Save those hard ones for last.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you again.
My pleasure.
I do want to thank all of you for being here today and for watching or listening wherever you have been doing that. And make sure, if you are not, well, let's just say if you're not a subscriber to the podcast or my YouTube channel, I hope you will do that. And next week, we're going to be talking about how to engage authentically, which is, you know, the show is called Live, Love, Engage, and it's about living fully, loving deeply, and engaging authentically. So we're going to dive into that. And until next time, if you are a regular listener, you know that I encourage you to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.